All right, looks like we're ready to go, folks. Welcome to the Plan Commission meeting here on July 15, 2014.
Well, yeah.
For those that have not had the honor of being at a meeting before, just to reiterate how they work. After we do our roll call and approval of the minutes, the city staff presents on an item. Once they're done with their presentation, it's opened up to the commission to do technical questions. Once we're done with our technical questions, it's opened up to the public. And then if you have something to say about a particular item, we ask that you step up to the microphone over there, state your name and address for the minutes. And after everybody who's desired to has had the chance to speak, we close public commentary, come back to the commission for discussion and a vote. And I also ask that you silence your cell phone so that it doesn't distract us during our deliberations. And I'd like to formally welcome Gary Gray here today to his first Plan Commission meeting. Welcome, Mr. Gray.
Thank you.
And let's start with the roll call.
David Borsek.
Present.
Ed Bowen. Jeffrey Tomes.
Here.
Thomas Foytek.
Here.
John Hens. Steve Cummings.
Here.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
Gary Gray.
Here.
Donna Laurie.
Here.
Robert Weigert. Carl Nolenberger.
In attendance.
Thank you. Now, the minutes from July 1st, 2014. Do we have any deletions, additions, corrections? If not,
Move approval. Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let us move on to item 1, grant private utility easement at 201 CP Avenue, Riverside Park.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
This one's in conjunction with the or the parking lot reconstruction at the Riverside parking lot. To get an idea of what it is, WPS is requesting an electrical utility easement to be run through. It's a proposed 12-foot utility easement, actually parallels this red line here, going through the property. It's approximately 826 feet in length and starts on the lower portion right adjacent to the Main Street Bridge, follows the north property line of the park, and then does cross through the proposed parking lot, and then heading north to CP Avenue. With it, just to give you an idea, again, this is the convention center, the park, and the parking lot. And city staff doesn't see any concerns with this one. It is, again, a 12-foot utility easement that's in conjunction with the proposed parking lot. Take a look at the existing parking lot. You can see how it has to be realigned because of some of the stormwater detention areas in the rear side of the property. So, again, staff sees no conditions with it and recommends approval.
Great. Any technical questions? Jeff?
Usually on those kinds of things, don't we put in the stipulations that when it's no longer used and stuff, that they got to put it back to where it was before?
I'm not sure I have.
Mr. Bodie might have a response to that.
That's actually part of the easement document that the city attorney drafts for that, that has all the conditions of the standard of the city. It's not part of the approval process here.
Great, thank you. Any other technical questions? Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Once? Twice? Okay, back to the commission.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? John, call the roll, please.
Borsek.
Aye.
Tomes.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Propp.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Laurie.
Aye.
Nolenberger. Foytek.
Aye.
Carried 8-0.
Moving on to item number 2, grant private utility easement for Boatworks Riverwalk project.
Okay, thank you. Very similar to the previous item. This one for item 2 is a AT&T communication line that's actually running between City of Oshkosh property here, and this is the development with Family Video. It's just a realignment of an existing easement that does go down Michigan Street and crosses where the Boatworks Riverwalk project is. They have to move the utility to keep it out of the way of some of the existing walk and proposed walk that'll be going in there. Easement's approximately 316 feet long, and again, it's a 10-foot wide utility easement for AT&T. We don't see any conditions with this one also, and in addition to what the previous question on the other item, Public Works, Community Development, and City other staff will work with AT&T in making sure the easement documents are written up appropriately. We do recommend approval for this one also.
Technical questions? Yes, David.
Excuse me. Is part of the easement document then the abandonment of the other easement?
Yeah, with the reconstruction of the area, the old easement will be abandoned and moved.
Other technical questions? Yes, Gary.
Yeah, just out of matter of curiosity,
What determines the width of the easements? Like, for instance, the previous item had a 12-foot easement, and this has a 10-foot easement, and I was just wondering if there's any kind of reason for that.
A lot of time with easement requirements, depending on the width, it's the size of the utility that's going in. Also, in this case, because it's just a true north-south line, it's easier to do some of the work around it. They don't need as much space to get the utility in there.
Okay, thank you. Any other technical questions? Seeing none, anybody here from the public to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission.
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Orsick,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye?
Gray,
Aye.
Lowry,
Aye.
Nolenberger,
Aye.
Freitag.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Item number 3, grant privilege in the street at 215 North Westfield Street.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Gabriel's Villa, Inc. is requesting a privilege in the street permit to install underground fiber utilities across the 200 block of North Westfield Street. The proposed site is located approximately mid-block between Skyview Avenue and Witzel Avenue, which is just to the south of this map here on the screen. The purpose of the project will be to allow the organization to connect 3 facilities, which will also allow for them to integrate with existing computer and phone systems, which is being utilized for other sites located on the Lutheran Homes of Oshkosh campus, which predominantly makes up the area. So just to kind of walk you through the campus, the property here on the west of North Westfield Street is Gabriel's Villa. So that will, the line will run to a private residence here, which is affiliated with the campus. It's used for housing staff that work at the facilities. And then it'll go across North Westfield Street and connect with Carmel's residence, which is located here on the east. And then Bellevue Home is located just to the east of Carmel's residence, and Simiana residence is to the south. The Department of Public Works has reviewed and recommends approval of the privilege request with the conditions that final design and location is coordinated with their office to avoid conflicts with existing underground utilities. Staff is recommending approval of the privilege in the street request, subject to the 10 conditions that were listed in your staff report. So that's all I've got.
I assume these 10 conditions are standard
Yep,
stuff.
they're standard conditions that are usually in conjunction with privilege in the street requests.
All right, technical questions? Yes, Jeff.
All right, now explain to me why this is different than the first two. Because this is what I was getting at. All 3 of them are private requests.
Right.
And now somehow this is different.
Right, this one's going under the private right-of-way, where the other 2 are actually agreements that are written up. But Steve's probably going
Man in
to,
the green shirt will answer.
he'd probably answer it much better.
David hit it pretty right. The difference here is that this is not a recorded document that the city is going to draft and record. This is an encroachment agreement with the organization to put a private facility within public right-of-way. So for this, these are the conditions that are in there, because we're not going to have a legal document that we're drafting and recording to put in there. With the easement, you're simply granting the permission for the city to do the easement. We can work all that language into the easement.
Well, the easement will contain a lot of these same stipulations.
The easement contains a lot of the stipulations about the requirements and everything, yes. So we have a formal document that you're giving us permission to draft that document for the other one. The privilege in the street, we need to be a little bit more conditioned with, because you're actually granting them the privilege to put the utility in there. We need the conditions to protect us to make sure we can get them where we need it.
And why then, if we do a privilege in the street, why wouldn't we draft up a formal agreement?
We do draft up an encroachment agreement with them. It's much more, we want the conditions up front on that from an experience of because we don't necessarily have the ability by any statute or anything or other document to put in there. We want those to be upfront with the people because they're a little bit more unique. With an easement, the terms and conditions that are in there are a little more standard to being on private property where you have to restore it. We're less worried about conflicts with other facilities and utilities because it's on the private property. We don't have public facilities and other public entities out there that can be in conflict.
Then are these stipulations that we have here just as enforceable as if we had an easement agreement? Legally enforceable?
One more time with that question.
Right now, we have something that we're doing here, granting a privilege.
Correct.
That has some stipulations. The other one, we have a formal easement document, legal document. Asking whether these particular stipulations are as enforceable from a legal standpoint as they would be in an easement.
From the city's standpoint, the privilege in the street is much more in our favor in that we can essentially step forward at any point in time and say, you are in conflict, you're in the way, you need to remove or relocate your facility, and they're obligated to do that. With the easement, those utilities gain rights to have that facility in there, and once they are installed in that easement and have that legal right to be in there, if a city project would come along in the future and have to relocate that utility, we would actually end up paying them to move that facility in the future.
Other technical questions? Gary?
Yes, I guess I got two of them. The first one is condition number 7 about the insurance. What does the insurance cover? Why is there insurance there? What's the potential liability?
Potential liability is they could damage something while they're digging to install it. They could damage one of the public utilities. They could hit gas line, sewer line, anything like that while they're installing or maintaining feature.
Okay, I understand that. Then I guess the question that I have then is, why do we need them to continue this insurance once this has been set up and properly established?
Because they would have the right to come in and maintain it at any point in time in the future.
And what kind of maintenance could happen, perhaps? I mean, guess theoretically.
If it is shallow, gets some water in it, freezes and breaks the cable or the conduit. That happens, they could have to come in, dig down, and repair the conduit in order to work on the facility if it damaged the conductive material.
Okay, and what damage would that would the damage be in that case? Would damage that type of situation be maybe the street would sink, or what's the potential damage if something like that happens?
If they had a large enough conduit and they had a failure, yes, they could cause the street to settle. The bigger issue I would see is that if they were digging to fix it and damaged some of the city, they would damage the street in the process of digging it up. They could damage a water line, damage anything while they're excavating to repair it.
Okay, thank you. The last question I guess I have is, will this privilege still be in existence if there's a difference in ownership? If Gabriel's Village, for instance, decides to go away for whatever reason, would this privilege still be enforced by new owners?
Yeah, it would go with the properties that are getting it, not with the individual owners. But there is the condition in there that could be removed at the request of the city. So if it wasn't needed any longer, the city would order it out.
Okay, thank you.
Other technical questions? Seeing none, anybody from the public here to speak to this item today? All right, back to the commission.
Move for approval with conditions.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Boyce,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Lori. Aye. Nollenberger,
Aye.
Owen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Moving on to item number 4, update on residential design standards variance request to permit a second-story addition to the attached garage of the single-story residence located at 6 Myrna Jane Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an item that was laid over from June 17th for a 30-day layover. Plan Commission laid that over to provide time for staff to meet with the property owners and look at alternatives to their proposal, which required the design standard variance. Just to kind of recap real quick, this is the property on the corner of Fond du Lac Avenue and Myrna Jane Drive. It's the corner lot. You can see here an aerial photograph. And this is a very dark image, but it's a single-story home. This is the attached garage. This is from Myrna Jane Drive. This is the view from Fond du Lac. And here's basically the garage, and you can see the very gentle slope on the roof. Basically, when they came in, the property owners came in first, they wanted to develop a second story on the garage, again from Myrna Jane, and these would be the two sides. It did not meet our design standards because the design standards don't allow additions to be higher than the dominant roof line of the existing structure. So we, planning services staff and inspection services staff, met several times, and we met with the owner a couple times to look at alternatives, and we looked at a lot of different alternatives, but the one that is currently under investigation, I guess, is the design you see here on the bottom. What it would do is basically utilize a steeper sloped roof on a one-story addition, and then include, and I'm sorry for the quality of these images, but this is my drawing here. Yes. And then coming off of the two sides, of the east and western sides of that single-story, slightly steeper roof, you would have dormer additions. And so this is what it would look like from the two sides. Now, this has not been designed out. It's conceptual. We've talked to the owners. They're pretty amenable with looking into this option. Their goal is really to get the storage space with the two dormers. They get a lot of storage space on that second floor, but what you'll see is has the potential of reducing the overall height of that addition by quite a bit, thereby kind of blending in a little bit more with the single-story home. The dormers give it a little more definition. When you look at the front of the house, you'll see there's a little sloped roof on the front as well. The dormers would kind of match into that. Wouldn't have the same slope, but would kind of match in with that style. Basically would be an addition that would be integrated a lot better in with the house and have less of a, what we feel, less of a visual impact. So where we are right now is trying to coordinate a meeting with the homeowners and their designers. They're using Nofke Lumber designers at Nofke. We have not been able to set that up yet. So basically, the property owners and staff are both requesting a hold on this project until we can meet with Nofke to determine the feasibility, get an estimate on the costs. After that, we would be coming back here. It would still require the variance, but we would know much more if it's feasible. The other thing I wanted to throw out, same as we had at the first meeting, without the addition onto the building itself, you could have an attached addition somewhere, a one-story attached addition somewhere on the lot. There's a lot of areas for it, or a detached structure somewhere on the lot as another alternative. So I'm throwing these out there. These are the two alternatives that would not need a variance to the design standards. However, this alternative would, but it appears like it's a very gradual transition from what they're looking for. Gets rid of this strict vertical disparity.
So what are you asking us for here?
We're asking you to put this on hold until we have time to investigate it with the owners.
Technical questions or?
A couple of things, David. One of the things that I'd asked is to give us an idea of what the height is of some of the other buildings that are in that immediate area, so that we know what the differential could be. I mean, there could be other one-stories, but they have a steeper slope, and this was taller than that they are, or they're just slightly taller. I don't know that answer. I want to know that one. And then two, I know it's not designed yet, but in the thought process, how much higher than the existing level would this new design be?
Okay. Well, as far as measuring the heights in the neighborhood, we did not do that, but when you go down this block, there are a lot of, this is one of the most gentle slopes on any of the houses, but most of them are about 4 or 5 feet taller with the peak of the roof.
That would make a decision, I mean, that would make a difference to me on a decision. If I knew, if this was only 2, 3 feet higher than anybody else that's there, I don't know if I care. If it's 10 feet, I probably care.
There's some that are about the same height, but most of them are a little bit higher, but not drastically. They're all singles, and we could get that when we come back.
Okay.
The second part you wanted to know was how much additional height would be put on over the single story.
Yeah.
It hasn't been designed yet. Where the issue comes in, it's the headroom in the upper floor. So as you design it, you need to have, I believe, a 7-foot ceiling in the center, and then where the dormers come out. So the reduction would probably be about 5 feet, but it's not designed yet, and how that all has to lay out with the trussing and everything. I don't know exactly.
Steve?
Just a quick question for David. Those are your, I'll say, renderings?
Well,
I would-
well, the base is from the petitioner, and the black lines are my wonderful.
I guess my
drawing, yes.
suggestion is if they're working with Nofke or another supplier,
Let them draw it up.
an architect, or a designer, not an architect per se.
Nothing personal.
Right. Right.
Nothing against your drawing.
Yes.
Nothing against your drawing. But have the,
Not
it's
what you were
spec'd
hired
out a
for.
little bit tighter. And
Correct.
question, based on some things that happened recently, if we approve this, and they get a building permit, how are we ensured that they do what they say they're going to do?
Sure, the same way we are with any building permit in the city. If they don't build it to specs, they would have to come through. We would send out correction notices. If those don't go anywhere, we would send out citations. Those either go to court to pay the citations. The other option they have is to come back and request the variance again. I mean, at that point, if it's denied again, you have, basically, I believe it's a 12-month time frame before you come back with the same request. If you modify it substantially, you could come back in a shorter time frame, but typically it's a 12-month. And yeah, this is just my drawing. When the designers get at it, it'll be much better.
Gary?
I am no
Gary and
architect or
then
designer.
David?
Why don't we go to David first?
Okay, David?
With this or any other, because you're changing the building, is there an occupancy permit that goes along with this at the end of the construction?
No, the occupancy is already on the site. The home is already occupied. It's just an addition to existing structure.
Okay, so effectively, there's, even though there is, in theory, limited, there's some kind of enforcement procedure, I mean, it could be interminable.
Well, you have your regular zoning enforcement, for one, that we would send our zoning administrator out and go through the regular process. Secondary, if the plans came in showing this is what they were going to build and they built something different, you would then have your inspection division that could also send out notices and citations.
But what I hear from you is that process, there's no enforcement. Because then they could come back and say, well, I want a modification. And then if that wasn't passed, they could still have another year to come back.
No, they would have to, if they came back, usually our enforcement runs for 30 days. If it's something like a construction project, they'll extend it. Basically, what happens is the citations go out, which are fines. Those fines, they would go to court, and then the county court would basically make a decision if they have to pay the fine, if they have to continue accruing more fines. In a worst-case scenario, and I'm not an attorney, but worst-case scenario, I guess you could have a raise order, but I wouldn't expect that would happen. But, I mean, in worst-case scenario, you could do that because they're not meeting their specs.
You know, what I'm really concerned, and maybe that Steve, that this remedy, you know, there is no real remedy. That if for disregard of conditions.
Well, it's the same remedy we have with all of our projects in the city. I mean, it's citations to get compliance, and then court orders.
Gary?
Yes, thank you. As I understand, there's three reasons to grant a variance. One is the intention of the standards has been incorrectly interpreted. Another one is the enforcement of the standards cause unnecessary hardship. The third one is standards do not apply to this particular projects. That is, for me, and maybe for some of the other commissioners, difficult to get my head around, because what we're basically doing, if we go with that option, is basically saying that the zoning code does not apply, that we're basically throwing out the zoning code for this one project. And it would be helpful for me if there could be some scheme some system that I and other people can take a look at and say, yes, it meets certain things, and therefore we should not apply the standards to this project or any project. And I do not know if there's anything in the zoning code that provides some guidance in regards to that. And I got the impression that the zoning code does not have that type of guidance. And I was wondering, would it be possible, if the commissioners also agree, maybe take a little time to research it to see if there's some kind of guidance that could be developed through the APA or to the smart growth people in regards to giving us some assistance in regards to deciding whether or not this application applies?
Well, we often do outside sources as well, but these three standards are basically at the judgment of the Plan Commission. And to give you an example, standards that don't apply, typically those would be like for a window closure on a facade that's not visible from the street. It would be a standard that would potentially not apply to the intent of the design standards.
Well,
but as far as, we typically do not send out all our requests to outside agencies for review.
well, I didn't say have outside agencies to review, but some kind of guidance, like there's guidance for unnecessary hardship, because quite frankly, I have some personal concerns about design standards, and if I vote personally, maybe I would vote to throw out the whole design standards on every project that came to the council or to the commission, and I don't think that's appropriate. And I'm just sort of looking for some kind of guidance like there is for unnecessary hardship. Next question. The request is for extension of time. How long? Are we talking about delaying it to next meeting, or a month from now, or 2 months from now?
Well, we're requesting indefinitely until we can work with the owners and bring it back. We don't have a time frame of knowing when we can meet with NAFKI and when the designs can be done. So as soon as that would be completed, we would bring it back to the Plan Commission.
There's no harm in us waiting. I mean,
The petitioners, it's really their time frame.
yeah, they're the ones paying for this, so.
Okay. I'm not too comfortable with that, but that's okay.
Donna?
I will pass for now, thank you.
All right. Any other technical questions? Seeing none, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Once, twice, 3 times, back to the commission, and you are asking us for a motion. This item, or what would you
To
call
put it on hold,
I
table
so
it.
move.
Okay, it's been moved to put it on hold.
Second.
And seconded by Kathy. Any discussion on that motion?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
Yes, I feel that what I have seen of the renderings of the potential conversion here, they appear to be modest and in good faith, and I would hate to have us get bogged down and put this woman through unnecessary bickering about things. So I think it's wise that we set this aside and hope to see it again soon.
Thank you, Donna. Other comments before we vote? Seeing none, call the roll.
Borsuk,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Nolenberger,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Moving on to item number 5, update on conditional use permit approval for an exception to the provisions of the downtown overlay district at 401 North Main Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one's very similar to the last. This is a conditional use permit request for a variance to the downtown design overlay regulations, basically for the replacement of windows. The request came in July 1st meeting to replace the existing windows on 401 North Main Street, which is the Beckwith House, historic building in our downtown district, with an alternative, and I'm going to kind of just give you a quick, although it's just a couple weeks ago. This is the location of the property. It's on the corner of Algoma and North Main. It's highlighted in blue. Obviously, a commercial building. It's mixed use, actually, with units up above, 8 units up above. Zone C3 downtown. Aerial photograph is, kind of see the building there. It's across the street from Monument Square or Opera House Square. I'll kind of go forward. So this is our North Main Street Historic District. The star is the location of the property itself. It's considered by the State Historical Society and the City of Oshkosh as a pivotal structure in the district. This is a relatively modern picture. 22 windows on the second floor were being discussed to be replaced. I believe there's 14 on the Algoma Boulevard frontage, with the remainder 7 on North Main Street. This corner window would remain intact as it is today, as proposed. Basically, this is just another picture. What they propose to do is replace the windows itself. They would keep the casings. Also, they would keep the moldings and the jambs. This is basically what the existing windows look like right now. They're double-hung windows, 101 inches tall with an arched top. What was being proposed is to replace them with a smaller 72-inch double-hung window, a transom window on the top, and fill in the curved top piece of the window itself with vinyl. This is pictures of the Algoma building, which is just behind it at 110 Algoma, south elevation, and this is almost, without the casings and everything on top of the windows, is almost an identical what was proposed. Basically a transom window in the top, double hung, and a fill into the top. So again, the subject proposal was to utilize the vinyl with the fill. Lewix, who was the petitioner, estimated the cost for the replacements at about $24,000, including installation. Since that time, Landmarks Commission attempted to contact the owner, and staff did, and we've had some communication, but not a lot. They also contacted the State Historical Preservation Office, who gave us a statement that's in your packets. It's in an email form. Basically mentioned that there are tax credits available. Vinyl windows are never considered acceptable for a tax credit situation. They did, just to summarize, put a warning in that vinyl replacement windows are considered the lowest end. In this temperate climate, they shrink and expand. Even though some have a 20 or 30-year lifetime, the state has seen them fail in around 7 to 9 years. That they'll contract and expand and break the seals, and they're just not a very good replacement. It's basically what the state had come back with. Landmarks Commission met, talked about it several times, worked on it individually, and they basically looked at 3 options that they would like to investigate, or alternatives they would like to investigate, and they've done some of that investigation already. One was to repair the existing sashes and windows themselves that are currently existing. There's a lot of information out there about repairing wood windows. They use epoxies to fill in, to actually also recreate sashes in wood. Use the existing windows, although of course you have a single pane. Storms, interior storms can be utilized, exterior storms can be utilized. They also contacted a carpenter, a local carpenter, and somebody who's done window replacement in other historic buildings and non-historic buildings throughout Oshkosh. who is very willing to come in and take a look at it, but he needs to get into the building to assess the windows themselves, and we were not able to make that happen in the 1 week and then the very short week with the holiday time frame that we had in between the two. But the one thing we would like to state and actually maybe praise the state a little bit is they reinstated their 20% tax credit at a state level. They lifted the moratorium that just went on for historic buildings. So there's currently a 20% federal tax credit for historic, what's deemed to be historically acceptable restoration, and another 20% that you can receive potentially from the state, which would be a 40% reduction. But obviously, we can't get any kind of even rough estimates from the carpenter, and there's been several other ones because they need to get in to assess what the windows look like. Second option they looked at was to replace the windows with wood or wood-clad windows. They usually clad them in aluminum. And that would retain the original window height and shape, that 101 inches with the arch top. We did find that there's a lot of window manufacturers out there. Landmarks did look into manufacturers, Eagle Windows, Marvin Windows, which is the windows that the petitioner's contractor utilize. Marvin Windows, Pella Windows, Colby & Colby, all can do custom windows in wood, in aluminum, or other metals, fiberglass in some cases, to make replacements that would match. They also talked to Omni Glass in town, who again could not provide an estimate without going out there to look at the condition of the site. But Lewis came back with an estimate of $92,000 for wood, aluminum-clad window replacements, with a $62,000 price tag to install. So equating to $154,000 for installation. Landmarks Commission contacted Marvin Windows direct. Marvin Windows came back with an estimate of $58,000 for the wood, aluminum-clad windows, with, based on similar installation, an $18,500 installation cost. Very rough guesstimate. They haven't been in the building. For a total of $76,500. So there's quite a drastic disparity what we're seeing between the two cost estimates here, which we don't have an answer to why they're so different. Omni Glass was contacted, like I had said. They're willing to come out and take a look at it, but they have not. We haven't been able to coordinate that. The third option would be replace the windows with aluminum or fiberglass windows that retain the height and shape again. Again, that would potentially be eligible for the 40% historic tax credit. Lewis gave an estimate on that altogether. Same installation cost of $62,000, a little bit cheaper on the windows at $73,000 for about $135,000 total cost. Omni Glass had not had a chance to give an estimate, but they utilize Eagle Windows and Marvin Windows, but they obviously could not give an estimate as well. Mainly because of time frame was very short. It was difficult even for Landmarks, 2 or 3 members individually calling, stopping out at businesses to even get what we received. And then also access to the building. The property owners are very busy. They own 2 businesses. It's going to take some time to coordinate getting in there and actually doing an assessment. Landmarks Commission would like to make a statement that they did put in my memo. And basically, that windows are a large part of any older or historic building, and they should be repaired rather than replaced whenever possible. Now, once again, historic preservation, that's their thought process. The same type of statement came from the state as well. They want to say original windows make up a considerable amount of surface area of your exterior walls. They help define and identify the architectural style and design, give scale to the building, and contribute to the larger context of the downtown and area they're in. Visual impact and appearance of new replacement windows that don't match or replicate the original features can be dramatic, and even minor changes in appearance can alter the way the building looks drastically, may have an effect on some buildings losing their historic designation. They did emphasize that it's their belief that there are viable options and alternatives to the replacements, including utilization of tax credits to soften that cost, to offset the cost of higher quality, longer-lasting duplicate windows, but that with the extremely short time frame and the coordination issues they've had with multiple contractors, the owners, and even their own lives working during the day and trying to go out and do this type of work, that they weren't able to provide the details that they thought you wanted from reading your minutes. and watching the meeting. So they're hoping that additional time can be provided, again, open-ended, working with the owner, and the State Historical Society, and also the multiple vendors that are out there, whether they be contractors who can do repairs or people like Lewick's who only do replacements, they won't do repairs. And they're hoping that the Plan Commission would grant them that time to work with them. Talked with the property owner, who is here as well. He has indicated, and he can speak for himself, indicated that he'd be very willing to work and look at some of the other programs that are out there to help offset the cost and create a longer, more sustainable option, which have not been investigated. Now it's all kind of new information for everybody. But Landmarks Commission did want to say if the Plan Commission does deem it appropriate to allow the replacements as requested, that at a minimum they would ask that the existing windows that are being removed be retained either on-site in the basement, that they could potentially be repaired in the future and replaced, or that they be salvaged and utilized to somebody else who would utilize those, for one, the glass and possibly the sashes and whatnot, but they wouldn't just be landfilled. And I guess with that, Landmarks Commission requests and staff request additional time to work with the owners, the state, and multiple contractors to provide appropriate and more complete recommendation on alternatives. But if the Plan Commission deems it appropriate to approve it, the existing windows and glass be salvaged.
All right, thank you. Technical questions. Let's start with David.
Two questions. At last meeting, I believe there was some question whether or not hardship could be applied to this, or should be considered with the request. And there was question whether or not there was a hardship provision. Technically, maybe the ordinance would enables reconstruction in a historic district. And I was wondering, has that been determined that there is a hardship standard? And then secondly, what, if there is, what is the criteria used to establish hardship? And then the second unrelated question is, even though the state has just changed or opened up their tax credits, does this facility qualify for the reopened historical tax credits?
Okay, for your first question, there are not defined standards in the downtown overlay district for the Plan Commission to judge the conditional use permit request. This is a conditional use permit. Variances are allowed through conditional use permit in this district. Does not specifically call out what that criteria would be. There was alluded to last time that economic hardship could be something that be considered. That was actually in the residential design standards, not in the downtown overlay. So that our quote at that time was incorrect. I think Darren tried to correct it at the end of the meeting, but it may have gotten lost. For your second question, it was the state. Would this be eligible? The building itself would have a reduced paperwork load because it is considered contributing, and in this case pivotal in the North Main Street Historic District. The process for that is you submit an application of what you're doing to the state. They do an evaluation. They then send that to Economic Development Corporation through the state for the state tax credits. If they're both approved, the State Historical Society can grant the 20% federal tax credits, and WEDC would grant the 20% from the state. So there are two pots of money. But from what we've heard from the State Historical Preservation Office, the building would be eligible, and this type of repair would definitely I shouldn't say definitely, would fall under a very typical request. Additionally, with talking to the owner, they're doing some other renovation on the building as well. I think they alluded to replacing the roof and some other work. In talking with them, we have now kind of backtracked, thinking maybe we can get all of this work and get some reduction in their cost for not just the windows, but apparently the roof is in very poor shape as well. But so I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay.
I would, if I were a betting man, I would bet they would get the tax
Okay,
credits.
even under with the reopeners, how it was qualified, there were some qualifiers in there that.
Yes. Yes, this is based on the historic designation, not on the age of the property. The way the legislation changed, they have a moratorium on non-historic buildings put into service before 1936. They lifted the moratorium on historically designated buildings, and this one is historically designated.
Thank you.
Stephen and Donna?
Thank you. I think what we have to look at is really what is best for the long term, both for the building itself, the city of Oshkosh, and obviously the current owner. If it's done right, and with the work of the Landmarks Commission and staff, the historic tax credits, when it does come time to sell that building, which people do, it'll be a far greater valuable asset if it's done right. If you do it kind of half-assed, you're going to get a half-assed price. I think we've got to really step back and look at the long term. The building, the city, our downtown, and obviously the investment the owner has in it. I mean, it'll devalue your investment by doing it wrong. And if we're working to do it right, when it does come time to sell, as I said before, you'll get more, you'll have a greater asset in your hands. So I would recommend that let's do this right and work together and have a project we're all proud of when it's done.
Donna?
David, how long a time frame do you feel it would be to see if all of these tax credits and such could be put in place?
Well, the tax credit, that time frame is really up to the State Historic Preservation Office. But I think our immediate time frame that we need to focus on is getting the contractors in there to evaluate the condition of the windows. I mean, if we get all the contractors in and the costs are astronomical, it may have a different opinion on the replacement, may not. But I think that's our first step. If found that it would be viable with the tax credit at that point, I would highly recommend the owner at that point apply for the tax credit and then go from there.
But are we talking a year or 6 months, or do you have any idea at all?
Track records or?
Tax credit, I would guess it's going to be around 6 months. But, I mean, as far as to get people in there to do an evaluation, wouldn't be that long.
Other technical questions, Gary?
Yes. In the staff packet, there were examples of other buildings that had the window filter. Mm-hmm. And the question I have is, are those contributing buildings, or are they non-contributing buildings?
Many of the buildings in there, well, the surveys were done for this district, I believe, in the early 90s. So at that time, if they were filled, they may or may not, I would have to look at the inventory if they're contributing or not. Some are not.
Yeah.
But the design standards, what the variances being requested for, aren't historic preservation design standards. They're downtown overlay design standards. Those were put into effect, I believe, in 2009. So any work that would have been done prior to 2009 would not have had to come through for any type of variance to the standards.
Yeah. I guess my thought is that one possibility, I'm not sure if I agree with it, is that if this type of thing has been done in past contributing buildings, I'm not sure if we should say no now.
If it's been done in the past, it doesn't make it right in the future.
Right. Technical?
That technically is true. The commission should not continue to make a bad decision.
We're still technical questions here. Any other technical questions? Stay on track. Seeing none. Anyone here from the audience to speak to this item? Please. Sure.
Paul Arnold of the Landmarks Commission. I live at 453 Mount Vernon Street. My house was built in 1910. I have 27 sets of double-hung windows. I am very well acquainted with all of them. I have re-roped, that's 54 sashes, which is 108 ropes. I've replaced pulleys where needed. I have replaced counterweights where needed. In 2 cases, I had to take apart the upper sash and rebuild one of the 4 wooden pieces on the upper sash and then reassemble it. None of that makes me an expert on windows. And my house is 30 years younger than the Beckwith house. So all I'm saying is I do have some appreciation for old windows. Every window I went up against has its own issues. Sometimes you can get rot in the bottom of the lower sashes, and yet the upper sash may be repairable. It is the existing upper sashes of the Beckwith house that have the curved glass, the arched wood. That would be the harder parts to rebuild, replace. So I contacted an acquaintance of mine who has done work for me. He's a carpenter, he's a cabinet maker, he's a woodworker. He has built porch windows for me. He did as indicated in your package, he did the windows on the Bauman building. And that kind of work of trying, if it's possible, to replace or rebuild the windows is very time-consuming, very putsy. Typically, a window manufacturer doesn't want to bother because it's too time-consuming, and they'll charge way too accordingly because their overhead is what it is. Windows used to be made by carpenters, so before we went to factory-made windows. So anyway, I spoke with Jason on the phone yesterday. And I mentioned to him then, and I'll mention it to all of you, that there are a couple of us on the commission that will be helpful, if possible, as a resource and for advice, if it'll help. And I have 3 business cards I can turn over to Jason as far as that would facilitate him getting, by his timetable, contact possible other vendors or the carpenter. So I can either be available to him or not as he chooses.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Really?
Hello, I'm Shirley Brabender Maddox, 1313 Jackson Street, and I'm also on the Landmarks Commission. One of the first things at our Landmarks meetings, when we get all the permits that have been given to buildings in historic districts, is I immediately look to see how much is that project costing. And if it's anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, I say, do those people know about tax credits? Because that's an incentive to do it right, and then to also add value to the building and to encourage them to do other projects right. Putting a boiler in my house was $10,000. I don't live in a historic district, so I couldn't apply for tax credits. But wherever possible, we try to do our very best to let people know. Someone on Algoma Boulevard had 2 projects, came up to like $80,000, and I called and I said, have you applied for tax credits? Do you know anything about it? And she said, we're so grateful that you're thinking of us. But we do know about them because the people in Algoma Boulevard have been educated. Now, I guess we have to do the same thing with Downtown Historic District and all of the other historic districts, that there are ways. And today's newspaper, the front page, Historic Tax Credit Program partially restored, and that would apply to the Bear Brothers project. If they want to do roof, if they want to do boiler, electrical, plumbing, all of that can go for tax credits. And because I received such a quick reply from the Historical Society, I'm sure that that's, on the state register, that's value. That's a pivotal property in our downtown, and they know that. I believe I was told that they respond between 7 days and 3 weeks. They try to get back. And so I would like to believe that it would not be this long, drawn-out thing. It's not to do a whole building. It's one project. For right now, at least, that's windows, and maybe you've got more. But so now we've got what we can say is a 40% credit. Windows built in Oshkosh in old buildings were probably old growth timber. In England, just recently, I saw a house that was one of the 25 most valuable homes. 1600s had the original windows. We've got that old-growth timber in our houses and our buildings, and Beckwith was built well in the first place. So the potential for good, strong wood is there. Of course, you got problems when it hasn't been maintained and hasn't been painted, and that can be mitigated. So I guess what I want to say is thanks for giving us the 2 weeks as we scrambled around, but I hope that we can move forward and that there are enough incentives for the owners to do it right. And if there's any other things that we can do, as a Landmark Commission, we're really open to anything to help. Thank you.
Anybody else here to speak to this item today?
If you like to.
All right, Jason Bear, 921 Harding Avenue. I just want to say that we are going to table this. I talked with David until at least next summer so we can explore all the options that we have. I did not realize when we moved to do this that it would become this. I am okay with this. Aaron and I are fine with going through the process, finding out what's going to be best. And obviously we want to do it too where it's the value of the windows aren't more than what we paid for the building, which some of those numbers are. So we're going to table this. I'm going to work with David and the Planning Commission, and we will find the best way to move forward on this.
So one more cold winter for your tenants.
That's fine. We're going to go in there and really, do what we can to make sure that, and the roof needs to be replaced this summer as well, as I was talking with David about, and that's, I think you said that the majority of the heat loss probably is the roof anyway. You know, we have a series of buckets that are all over the place to catch rainwater. It's pretty bad, so we're going to do that first, and then we'll look at windows next summer.
Thank you. Really appreciate your commitment to this. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission. Did I hear the man say, okay, Carl?
Should it be tabled or should it be with?
Is he requesting this be withdrawn for now, or?
Well, we're requesting it be put on hold,
Okay, just like the last one?
just like the last one.
So is the term layover correct?
Layover.
You could, layover is going to be to a specific
Yeah.
time. Hold would be open-ended.
Okay, so it's indefinite, like an indefinite hold.
I would so move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Kathy?
I was ready, not happily perhaps, to vote for this last time, based on the fact that other windows were similarly done in the historic area, but the memo from the Wisconsin Historical Society set me straight. You know, it says in no uncertain terms that vinyl windows should not be used. And so I think that tells us that we're doing the right thing. Thank you to the owner very much for being willing to put it on hold and to spend that time looking at what might work within his budget and what might work with this building. So appreciate that very much, and thank you, Landmarks and the owners, for looking into doing it right.
I too was kind of with Kathy, and I appreciate the spirit of collaboration here between the owner and the commission, because I think that's how you have to get this kind of stuff done. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of was with Kathy. I was kind of, I thought the attempt that they provided to try and make it look like it was a decent attempt. I mean, you're always going to have people all the way over on the left, you're going to have people all the way over on the right, and at the end of the day, it's going to be somewhere in between where you have to find that balance. What David and Dave were talking about before, as far as this economic hardship, well, that kind of depends. You had a $75,000 option, you had a $158,000 option. And that, to me, can be seen as a hardship, although maybe the 158 option is the right way to do it for the city, for historical preservation, but isn't necessarily the right way to do it for the owner. Because putting in some nice windows, is he really going to get $158,000 worth of value out of that when he goes to sell it? That's really not the city's responsibility to determine. That's the owner. We're not the owner. However, you know, and we throw around things like tax credits. Well, you know, tax credits are great if you can take advantage of them, and they do nothing for you to put up the upfront money that you need to pay for it. If they're refundable tax credits after the first year, you could get a fully refundable, that's great, but that's typically not what these tax credits do. They take over time based off the income of the property. This particular property wasn't bought to be shown as a museum, it was bought to be a commercial property that he operates a business in. So there's a lot of factors to be included, and I do appreciate the cooperation between all the parties, and I'd agree to lay this over, but on the same token, we need to use that thought process instead of looking at exactly all the way to the right or all the way to the left. We have to find a balance that's going to be good for the three parties that Steve had mentioned.
There's a motion on the table. Ready? Okay, call the roll.
Boyce.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Prop.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Nolenberger. Foytek.
Aye. So this, and
On hold.
put on hold. All right, great. Item number 6, review of the 2013 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report of the Community Development Block Grant Program. Hi. One page.
Every year, the city comes to the Plan Commission to let you know how we have done on expenditures with our block grant program from the previous year. So we are now looking at the program year that runs from May 1, 2013 to April 30th, 2014. And what we have to do is create a report that's called a CAPER, which is the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, which is pretty much the city's report card to HUD of how we've done on our expenditures. And as you can see here, our entitlement grant for 2013 was $721,000. We had program income of $119,000. That is pretty much from housing rehab loans that we have given out over the years that have been repaid. The houses have been sold. And we turn that around and use that on more housing rehab projects. Oops, which one do I do?
This one's forward.
And our expenditures usually fall into 4 categories: Central City, Housing and Neighborhood, Public Services, Planning and Administration. And the chart here will show the various expenditures in each of those categories, and that we have spent 89% of our 2013 block grant program on activities that benefited low to moderate income households and/or persons, which minimum of 70% has to be spent. So I think we did pretty good. So that's just our annual report.
Great. Questions from the commission? Steve?
Of the remaining 11.1%, does that carry forward?
Yes. Just carried forward and used for the same type of categories. We carry it forward to those same type of categories.
Yes, Jeff?
Why did we underspend?
For housing rehab, let's say, for example, any money that we would have had allocated for there. Some of the projects get started later in the fall, don't get completed until the following spring or summer, depending on the weather, because a lot of it would be exterior work, so those expenditures may not fall into the program year, so they get carried forward to the next program year. Activities, let's say like in Central City, we allocate, let's say like $50,000 for acquisition of properties. If we didn't have any properties that were acquired or came in under that amount, so then we'll have extra money to carry forward for potential projects for the following year.
Once you allocate it to the Central City, you can't spend it on housing and neighborhood?
No. You can reallocate, I believe it's up to 10% within a program year without doing a complete amendment to the entire application. So, no, we try and carry it forward into the same categories so that we don't have to worry about that.
Donna?
Would there be any, do you foresee having to juggle from something that's not being used, as you just mentioned, to something that we could utilize, have it utilized better? Are you able to do that?
A lot of the activities that we carry out in the 4 categories were approved in the 2010 to 2015 consolidated plan. So if those activities might fall within those categories and what was approved by HUD in that consolidated plan, potentially we could look at different activities. It just depends on what it might be. And again, we do try and do the low to moderate income benefit as much as possible because that's basically what the funding is for, benefiting low to moderate income households and persons.
And to go to that particular genre, do you set aside a time to discuss that, a meeting that you do discuss moving monies around, or is it just as it comes up?
We just have our annual meeting for, let's say, applications for public service activities and setting the categories and funding for each of the categories. Usually around the same time we're doing the city budget capital improvement program because our application is usually due by March. So we usually work all those items together and the different types of activities that we can carry out using capital improvement money, block grant money. So we usually just look at it once.
And typically you get every year, usually during the CIP process, but it's been kind of changing lately, we'll give you a report on where we're allocating our funds to. So usually you get an annual report, and then at the end you get a caper. So you can kind of see where they are at the beginning and the end. Try not, as Darlene had said, we try not to move stuff around too much because you have to get the Housing and Urban Development blessing on anything, and it's difficult sometimes.
Jeff and then Gary.
I guess where I'm struggling. Now, I understand what you're talking about on projects that stay late in the year, and you've allocated those funds. I get that. But to have a year and say, okay, we didn't spend this $50,000 on buying a house when we have plenty of houses that need repair, and to go a whole year and we don't do that, seems illogical to me.
Our program year does start May 1st, but by the time we submit our application, we get approval from HUD that our application plan and our proposed project activities are acceptable, and then we request the release of funds. Sometimes that doesn't happen by that May 1st deadline. For example, when they had the federal shutdown, and actually the 13 program was with the federal shutdown, we did not get our allocation approval and release of funds until, I want to say, it was October or November of 2013. So you can't start spending money until you have all those approvals from HUD.
But what I'm saying is that
and Congress.
But the trouble is that what I'm saying is that we have projects in the pipeline. We still have 6-7 months to spend the money, and we don't do it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, it does carry forward. I guess my next question is, from year to year, because we only see these 1 year at a time,
right?
How much of our annual spend actually gets carried forward from year to year to year to year? Is it a small percentage, and this is an anomaly? Or is it the norm that we carry over a good size?
I think it's
varies.
I think it's the norm that we carry over, and I think every community does, but it's usually not very much. There's also, and you can correct me if I get the term wrong, but it's there's also a ratio of money you have to spend that you can't sit on, for lack of a better term, or you have to return it back to HUD. So you just can't bank on money and sit on it. There's what that's called. It's like a spending ratio. You can only have so much of your allocation has to be spent, or you have to return it so it's being used. But a lot of the situations, there's a lot of regulation, and I know you're familiar with this too, a lot of regulation with everything we do. So, if you have money left over in acquisition, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place. It has to be blighted. You can't be relocating people or displacing people. So just to say there's a lot of houses out there that we could buy. There might be a perfect one that we all want to buy, but it's not actually eligible to purchase. And then the time frame to actually get it might be incredibly difficult depending on what the owner feels it's worth when he sees federal money coming. And so a lot of times that will be, what do you put it? You'll set it aside. You'll set the money aside, ledger it, and we'll be going through that process, and then it'll fall through, and then the money falls back, onto the general. So all those factors kind of come in, and so it is really kind of fluid on our goal is to spend it all every year. We allocate how much we want to spend, but I don't know if there's been any year since I've been here that we've gotten it all spent in the program year, but I don't know.
No,
I don't think
but
so.
there's always some carryover. And also with the program income, we had $119,000. That has to be spent before the regular money is spent. So, and that has to be spent on housing improvement programs.
Right, that is another good point, because you don't know how much you're getting back from program income, from people paying back their loans. So your $300,000 that you thought you were going to spend is now $400,000, and you've only lined up enough projects for $300,000, and then you have to scurry around to get more projects.
Yeah.
Usually just do those on the next year when the whole batch of applications come in. But I guess we're getting in the
Yeah,
minutia.
well, some years we've had over $100,000 on program income. Some years it was like $50,000 or less. It was very low. It just depends on what the market is and how many of the existing rehab loans would potentially be repaid.
Gary and then Steve?
Yeah, some quick questions and hopefully quick answers. First one, I think, is a very simple question and simple answer. It says that this report availability was publicized for public access. Was that notice a Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3 notice?
Class 1.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, has all the priorities, goals, and objectives been matched or met for this year that are in the considerated plan?
Yes, all our percentages that we had to meet were met, yes.
Okay. Next question is, I realize the final decision hasn't been made probably yet, but will the city submit another 5-year or a multi-year consolidated plan?
Yes, that is a requirement. If you're going to be requesting federal community development block grant funds, you have to have a consolidated plan. It's a 5-year plan, and our next one will be due in 2015 before we can submit our 2015 application.
Okay. Since the community development block grant money has generally been decreasing, theoretically, would there be a time where the grant money would not pay for overhead? And I'm not sure if that's
Yep.
that could be
Very possible. As funding is depleting every year, yes, we have to adjust but still meet our caps that are required by HUD.
As I think David's mentioned, it's very difficult, very complex. I guess the last question I have, more of curiosity than anything else. Does the city get the block grant money in one lump sum or is it over time?
We get reimbursed based on the expenditures that we have that are eligible for the program.
Okay, so over time.
Yes.
Okay, I was just, to explain why I'm asking, I was just wondering about the single audit and how much money is in the single audit. So, thank you.
All right, any other thoughts before we grant we don't have to do anything, actually, it's just information.
Yep.
Just informational.
Thank you very much, really appreciate your effort. We have one more item, it's called number 7, Riverfront Vision Process, Let's Be Pioneers presentation.
Yeah, I think you've heard Darren speak on this a couple times. Doing our vision for the riverfront, and we're fortunate enough to have Eric Fowle here. He's Executive Director of East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. He's got some handouts, I think, for you, and I have some slides up here as well. But he's here just kind of tell you where we're starting with our being pioneers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners, for some time on your agenda today. I'm Eric Fowle, Executive Director with East Central. Thank you. And here tonight to talk about some of the plans we have for moving forward with Riverfront Visioning program. I'm going to make the assumption that all of you or most of you are familiar with East Central, but just in case you're not, I do have copies of our annual report here. Maybe not enough for everybody, but if you'd like to take one, please do, or pass them along. We do have that online, but basically East Central is a multi-jurisdictional agency, and we have counties that pay a direct tax levy, so our assistance to the city is essentially free on this project by virtue of Winnebago County being a member of the commission. And we're more than happy to help our communities in projects like this, and we want to help you take a fresh look at that riverfront. This was a request submitted in our technical assistance program and really is based on some work that we've recently done in the region, most notably working with the village of Kimberly on the New Page Mill project site. We had gotten involved in doing 3 community visioning sessions, a little different format, but really to explore ideas of what they were going to use or reuse that 98-acre site for. That project, by the way, recently won an award from Wisconsin Chapter of American Planning Association and actually spurred a lot of additional interest in this kind of work. So not only are we doing this kind of work with Oshkosh, but we recently did some visioning work similar in nature with City of Kaukauna on their downtown. We're working with City of Wapaka on reimagining their downtown, and in a few months we'll be working with City of New Holstein on the abandoned Tecumseh project site. So we're pleased that this kind of information is being requested. I think the biggest thing to take away from here, and all of you know it, and I'm sure residents know it, but the river is really one of the largest assets within your community. I don't know where it measures compared to other things, but I argue if you ask anybody, it's going to be in the top 3, and there's a lot of potential there. A lot of things have happened along the river. I hate to use the word piecemeal because I know there's been a lot of extensive planning along the river. But I think it's time to take a fresh look at things. And we want to do this in a manner that has the best public engagement as possible. And that's really what this is about, is public engagement and idea generation. The term pioneers, or the title Let's Be Pioneers, is kind of twofold. I don't think I need to talk about the obvious, which is probably a site that will be folded into this and looked at ultimately. The other is just kind of to encourage community spirit and engagement and get people to come out and know that they have an opportunity to affect change. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways in our work in Kimberly, is the fact that the initial visioning that we did basically crafted the master plan with most everything that was said in that room over those 3 workshops, and there was little, if any, argument by the public for what the proposal is for that 98-acre site, and actually there's a lot of development interest as a result too. So there's 3 workshops that we have planned. Referring to the flyer, this is draft and preliminary. Staff is looking at this, but we're getting ready to promote things. We're essentially looking at 3 workshops that will be held on 3 consecutive Wednesdays in August, the 6th, the 13th, and the 20th. We've staggered the times here. 2 of them will be evening sessions, and 1 will be more of a lunchtime session. The idea here is to try, and best we can, target neighborhoods, adjacent neighborhoods to the river for that first session, although anybody can attend any session, obviously. The second session, being around the lunch period, would try hopefully to entice those in the business community, realty, development community. You don't necessarily have to live in Oshkosh to have a stake in that riverfront, and we would encourage anybody to participate. The third one would be more community at large. We don't know what kind of breakdown we'll get or if we'll hit those target audiences for each one, but I do expect that we'll have a good number participating. In Kimberly's instance, we had anywhere from 50 to 60 people per workshop, which I think for a size of that community was quite impressive. We're hoping we draw in 100 or 200 people possibly. I hope we can handle that as well, if that's the case. So this is just sort of an informational brochure that we're looking at publishing and getting out into many hands and through many vehicles. The second item I'm showing you, and you have, is a larger diagram, and this is really kind of internal in nature. And we're changing the format of this. We continue to learn as we conduct these workshops. The ones we did in Kimberly were very targeted to a group of 50 or 60 people sitting in the room at once, and we would be sharing some information and then going through exercise and getting feedback as one large group. The stuff we're doing in Wapaka right now is actually through a council-appointed committee of business owners and other stakeholders in downtown, a little different environment. We figured to try and get the most effectiveness here, we would conduct these as open house style. We would have East Central staff as well as a lot of city staff assisting in the setup and the participation and organizing and working with folks at the workshop. But essentially, we're looking at 6 different exercises at 6 different tables. And we figured out a lot of details along the way on how to make these things fluid and kind of get the results that we're hoping for. The questions, essentially, that are being asked at each of those tables are written alongside each of those colored boxes. And I'll go through them very quickly, one by one, just to give you a sense of the kind of input that can be provided and what it could be used for. But the first question we like to ask in any of these is simply, what do people perceive the identity of Oshkosh to be? And we typically break that up into 3 categories. Is it something that's historic or a past identity? Is it something that's current? I mean, if you look at the past, you're talking sawmills and old industry and those types of things. Current could be, I've heard the term event city used, might be something that people connect to, or EAA. And we also ask what their future identity ought to be. In some communities, they might say, we want to be the bicycling capital of Wisconsin. We don't know, and the point is we don't want to be leading. We want to get honest ideas and thoughts from people. But the information from that exercise alone can generate a lot of ideas and possible themes that could be applied to the riverfront. We always do mapping exercises, and people love to work with maps, so we kind of throw the crayons out there and some maps. In this case, there'll be large maps the size of this table, given the length of the riverfront, and simply asking the questions of how people identify with the river. What are the boundaries? What do you call the riverfront? So in other exercises, we'll end up with 15 or 20 or 30 different boundaries identifying a feature like that, and through the use of GIS and just some common sense, you're able to get a consensus of what that is. And that boundary could be used for many applications, whether it's policies that are created by the city down the road to specific study areas. But we kind of look at who are we to tell the public what the riverfront is. So we start at the very basic level. We obviously want to look at opportunities to connect the riverfront, and a lot of communities have been finding ways to do that. People involved in the exercises may decide they want to try and see things like EAA better connected to the riverfront, or various parks or other administration facilities, you name it. But we come up with some very interesting maps and typically some consensus, again, showing maybe some of the more important places in the city that could connect. By what method? We'll ask that sometime. And I think that will tie very well into other plans and planning projects, whether it's transportation-related, transit, bicycle, pedestrian accommodations. It's not meant to redo plans that are on the books, but really generate ideas and some new thoughts on how to look at those things. The Table 4 and Table 5 are essentially looking at assets and opportunities. Assets, what should we keep? What helps contribute to some of that identity down there? What should we preserve, protect, enhance, keep if it's being demolished and move something somewhere else along the riverfront? The opportunities could be looked at as the opposite. What things need a match thrown to them? It could be somebody that wants to tear an existing plan or a new project to shreds. It's really wide open, and we encourage that kind of feedback because you get some very honest and very interesting answers. The The last one is really looking at a broader category that would apply to uses along the riverfront. Might deal with density or intensity of uses. Some people might feel it all ought to be green space. Some people might be on the other extreme and say it all ought to be wall-to-wall condos. We're going to get a better sense of the intensity of use there. The key here is this is a vision plan. Like I said, we do not want to lead people in their answers. We find that it generates a lot of discussion around the tables, and as people commiserate or start hearing others' ideas, we try and log that stuff separately if it's not documented. And we really don't apply any restrictions. Money is usually one of those that comes up as restrictions. I argue don't plan to have no money. That's foolish. You want to get the best ideas possible. There will be some things on one extreme or the other, some that are impossible, or maybe just even a little hilarious if you think about it. But that's okay. That's part of the process, and we can learn from those kinds of things. We want the sessions to be very open, very creative environment, and this is going to be done in a manner that once all is said and done and the results are kind of tabulated and a summary report is provided, it's not going to commit the city to anything. This is not a master plan. A master plan would be the next step and be done assumably by the city or through some other process. So we're stopping at that visioning part. We're going to offer a summary and perhaps some interpretation of what we as planners see coming out of the results, but we're going to stop short of providing very specific recommendations on anything or certainly to any particular parcel of land. We may generate some other kind of schematic maps or things that will help guide the conversation from that point. So we find it's refreshing to work with the public in this manner, and we found the value to the public is very high when they're simply asked for their ideas, and you don't constrict it or put it in a box saying we're talking about housing here, we're talking about transportation. It could be anything and everything. We're getting ready to promote this, so certainly we want some feedback from you as the Plan Commission, working with staff and the city manager to develop a press release. I've also talked with Catherine Eiswinder from Winnebago County UW Extension. She's very intrigued with this process. She will do what she can to help promote it as well. She probably won't assist in doing the exercises, but she may stop by to view and watch what happens. If all goes well, we will try and have a summary report somewhere around October 1st, and certainly we'd be willing to come back to the Plan Commission or the Council or whomever wants to listen to give a presentation on the results and kind of an assessment of how things went. We're very positive that it's going to be a good thing. So we just really wanted to share the basics with you this evening, and before things kind of get finalized, certainly take any feedback that you may have, whether it's now or in the next week or two, before we finalize the promotional items. But if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But we're looking forward to this.
Start with David.
I hope I present this correctly. When I hear a visioning workshop, I think of a couple of years ago when we had this visioning survey that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, at the end of the day, pretty invalid. How do you make sure that this is valid and representative and not steered answers?
Well,
steered conclusions.
Everybody's really only going to get one answer per table, and it's their opinion, and we don't make note of who said what. It's pretty much done anonymously unless someone's in the room and they kind of know who else is in the room. But it's immaterial as to where the answers come from our perspective. It's input, it's public input, and all of it, in my mind, would be valid, no matter how extreme it may be. The council, the Plan Commission and/or the council at some point might have to weigh in or staff and kind of pick apart some of those things based on their knowledge and experience. But in my experience, any public input is valid. When you're talking about doing things through a survey, right off the bat, you're talking about having a valid survey in terms of the way the questions were phrased. You're talking about response rates and a whole host of things that could be measured for validity. It's valid if you come in the room and you give your input. And this is done in this manner because it is a little more exciting. It's not, a survey will scare people away, or people will read into it, in my mind, on what this could be used for or might not be used for. Some may even think, you know, there's a little code somewhere so they can tell that I filled out this survey. So surveys, to me, are not the most effective ways of public input.
Jeff?
Earlier, you talked about 90-some-odd plus acres of the riverfront, but then on table 2, you're asking people to define what is the riverfront.
Mhm.
So I'm a little bit confused. Do we have a preconceived idea what the riverfront contains, or are we asking people what the riverfront contains?
Yeah. No, the 98 acres I was referring to was the size of the site in Kimberly. We were constrained with that from a development perspective, and that was the focus. Here, we know we've got about a 3.5-mile stretch essentially from Lake Winnebago, and we're kind of using Highway 41 as the western boundary. But how far away you are from the river in people's minds is what constitutes riverfront is going to be different. Some people may say all of downtown is riverfront. Some people may say things 10 feet away are riverfront. So we're going to be able to better define the consensus of the community on how far reaching the influence of that water is on the community. Does that answer your question?
Oh, that's fine.
Gary?
Yeah, I think this is potentially a great activity, I think, on the Plan Commission needs to be careful to make sure the process is fair and complete and not biased. And I think that's probably one of the functions of the commission. But I think initially it sounds like a good idea, and I think I'm going to try to attend all 3 meetings.
We would certainly encourage that. And I appreciate your comment on the bias, and we're going to be very cautious. I think, on one hand, we obviously want to just lay blank pieces of paper out for people, which is essentially what we're doing here. But we also want to have a little bit of an acknowledgement of past work, as well as plans that are in place. And so we did intend to try and have a little display or something off to the side that gives a summary or some examples of plans that were done or projects. Because those things exist, they're out there. This exercise and the results doesn't mean those things are going to change, but it may open the door to those conversations. As you know, plans aren't set in stone.
Steve?
How closely are you working with the Fox, Wisconsin Heritage Parkway?
Well, that's a good question, and one of my staff, Tom Barron, actually sits on the board, and Tom will be participating on this. Again, we want to be cautious that we are not leading people as to their ideas and opinions, but I would think that's going to be more of an informational piece that'll be off to the side, just so people are conscious that that effort is going on. There may be people from that organization or connected to it, contributors, who knows, that participate, and we'd encourage that as well. But they're going to come with a different set of knowledge and perspective, which is fine. I doubt we're going to be able to separate that out at the end of the day, or even kind of tell, if a particular organization or group gave all these results versus the general public. You're not going to be able to tell.
Kathy? And then Donna.
Yeah, describe the process again. Is this something where you come in, we've got an introduction, and I go to table 1, and then I jump over to table 4, and then I jump back? Sort of a...
Yeah. The idea here is to get people to participate in at least one, if not all, 6 exercises. And these are fairly quick things. We're looking not for deep thinking, but sort of off the top of your head answers. If you're spending more than 10 or 15 minutes at a table, you're overthinking things. So given that we're doing this in a 2-hour session, we're kind of giving folks notice that you should plan on at least spending 30 minutes, maybe up to an hour of that time to fully participate. So there may be people that kind of come in and check out a couple of exercises and then they need to go, and that's fine. So we don't expect we're going to have balanced numbers of input at each table. Some people may go to things that interest them more, or no, I really don't want to think that hard about identity. I want to go play with maps, and that's fine. That'll, I think, give us a better sense of maybe where some of the priorities lie across these kind of topic areas too. But we're looking at a minimum of 30 minutes probably for people to fully
So that would be
participate.
an initial overview, this is what you're doing, or somebody would greet me if I come in and say, here's what you can do, here's 6 tables you can go to.
We're going to have staff at each of the tables too.
Yeah, and I've done that kind of thing before, and it does work out well.
Yeah.
Winnebago Lakes Council.
Okay.
They had this kind of an exercise.
That's a good parallel.
And one, people were interested and excited and went to all stations, so to speak.
Right.
So any one of these workshops, Gary said he wants to go to all 3. Commissioners, council, other city committee people can go to any or all. Community, public can go to any or all. You've got targets, but that just means you're marketing to that group. That doesn't mean that one is ineligible.
Exactly. Anybody can participate in any one. We will have a registration and orientation table. We will attempt to gather names and email addresses from people, not solely to identify their results with that person, but with the expectation that some follow-up will be happening down the road. When we have a summary plan or summary report done and out on the web, we want to directly notify people so they can go and they can take a look, because they're going to be interested to see the results and how they compare to their own mind or their own vision. There may be work on follow-up surveys if there's some clarification that we find we need on some of the exercise results. Just following along in the next steps, whatever those are, and inviting people that did participate to participate in the next step if a master plan is in fact being created. So we'll do what we can to get information from people, but their identity will kind of be removed from the results.
Donna?
Yes, would you please go back and explain to me who the group was that Mr. Cummings referred to? I'm not aware.
Fox Wisconsin Heritage Parkway. Fox Wisconsin Heritage Parkway is actually under a nonprofit organization currently, and that has been an idea and a concept that was actually around now for probably a good 30 years, and a lot of work was put in by East Central in the early part of that to facilitate conversations of looking at the history and heritage of the upper and lower Fox River and lower Wisconsin River, essentially the exploration route of Marquette and Joliet. The basis for that assisted in the transfer of the 13 locks from the Corps of Engineers to the state, which are now, of course, being reopened and restored. That's contributing to the recreational opportunities. So the nonprofit organization was formed a couple of years ago and has really taken it under their wing with various state, regional, and local partners to really look at promoting the history and heritage of the Riverway, and in turn using that as an economic development vehicle, as a quality of life, an attractant type of thing. And they're really doing a lot. They've been doing a lot with adding kayak launches and ADA accessible kayak launches, to working with communities on various plans to try and get communities to voluntarily integrate those themes into their riverfronts.
Thank you so much.
So they do have a website. Just Google it, and you'll find out more than you wanted to know. Probably some interesting things, too.
And Donna, Oshkosh is a partner municipality with the Parkway. They do assist us on quite a few things, and including kayak launches, ADA accessibility, and a lot of other things.
On behalf of Plan Commissioner Cummings, who's had a lead, but he's a member of the City Council, I want to know, are you guys going to be making a similar presentation to the City Council?
Before this gets launched, we did not plan on it, but we could try and accommodate that.
I don't know what
We'll
thinks.
work with Darren, and
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, if he'd follow up and he can get in touch with us, but we can try and make ourselves available to do that. Probably something a little more concise than this, I realize, but.
Oh,
All
this
right.
is great.
You ready to congratulate them and wish them good luck?
Yeah, thank you.
We'll take the
Thanks
good
a lot.
luck right now. Thank you. We look forward to it, and we look forward to working with you. Please give a call if you've got any questions or concerns that arise in the next week or two, but I hope to see some of you at the events.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
Thank you.
And it looks like there's a planning director's report. That would be you, sir.
Wow. I guess there's two items on there. One was the plan development amendment for Big Chrome, or Big Rig Chrome. That was for the riprap against the natural plantings for the detention basin in the front. It went to a recommendation of denial from the Plan Commission, went to the council. They have referred it back to the Plan Commission and asked staff to work with the property owners to look at alternatives. And so it'll be coming back to the Plan Commission after we've had a chance to work with the owner. The second item is zoning ordinance update and status on that. We're continuing to plug away at sections. Land use section is completely written. Most of the bulk tables, which are your setbacks and that kind of thing, are finished, except finished in draft format, obviously. There are some big question items out there that we're going to need assistance with, first from the steering committee and then probably from groups like yourselves, such as requiring garages to be set back behind the front plane of homes, very controversial things like that, which is...
What does that mean?
No snout houses. Garages would have to be behind the front plane of the house.
What if you have an L-shaped house and the garage is up here?
Well, there would be allowances for that, but to have just have the garage sitting in front of the house would, as proposed right now, is in there as a big question mark to be discussed.
You know when the steering committee is going to meet again?
We're hoping to meet beginning of next month.
Okay, great. Gary and then David?
Yeah, I would like to be notified when those steering committees are going to be held, you know. The next question is, has there been any kind of tentative schedule on the process of zoning code revisions?
There was an original tentative schedule, but it's being revamped right now because it is slower than what we had hoped. We're hoping the end of the year to have most of the text drafted and then start in the winter doing the map. We're going to do them in two phases. So first you write the text with the districts, and then the second phase is to do the map. None of them, even though the text is adopted, it doesn't go into effect until the map is completed. People review what their properties are and what the zoning is being proposed. They like to look back and say, well, what does this actually mean? So to do them at the same time is difficult because a lot of times you'll get property owners saying, well, I want this thing changed in the code because you're designating my property as this section. So we're taking them one at a time.
I don't see any problem with doing things separately. I'm just not sure about the delay, but that's another topic for another meeting perhaps. I guess my concern is doing the zoning code revision and reviewing and discussion analysis of it at the planning commission level, public level, whatever, is going to be done at a rapid pace, and zoning code revisions are like being hit by a 10 or 15-ton truck going at full speed. You get knocked out of your feet, and you need some time to take a look at this stuff, people. You can't just sit here for an hour and a half unless you just want to say, okay, we're not going to discuss anything, we're not going to analyze anything, we're just going to pass the resolution approving it without looking at it.
That won't happen here.
You need a lot of time.
Won't happen here. David?
Yeah, well, thank you. To address that point, being through at least one or two of these, the level of review, either by committee or by the commission, is pretty intense and pretty thorough. And I haven't been a part of anything where any of the analysis by the plant commissioners has ever been mailed in or just accepted prima facie, so to speak. But I do have a question, seeing that we're seeing Big Chrome here. And again, when we look at the analysis of this, what really scares me and what I heard in one of our earlier discussions, what is the effect of noncompliance with terms and conditions of conditional use permits? And I think that really needs to be a significant part of our analysis of what it means to be in compliance with the terms and conditions that a development has been approved to go forward, and what our remedies are.
I would just support that, because the reason I voted the way I did the last time is because he violated the terms and conditions.
And-
I think the merits of his case were pretty good in terms of what looks better than this, but the thing is, he had a condition, he just ignored it. But I agree with you that is.
And I want to make sure, just to follow, that we don't trap ourselves, that it doesn't matter what the terms and conditions are that we put, that we, not only do we attach to a particular project, but that are agreed to by the beneficiary, if you will, or the respondent, but that then they say, well, what the heck? I don't like it, and I'm going to change it, and then I'm going to add, what is it? Instead of permission, I'm going to be contrite. Contrition instead of permission, and I think that this has got to be very, very the integral part of the analysis of Big Chrome, and the aesthetics are really secondary. And I just hope that we get that level of analysis from staff, if you will.
All right, we're dwindling here, so perhaps.
What does the term Big Chrome mean?
That's the company.
It's a company.
They do chrome on semi-trucks.
Yeah, we're done. All right. Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
We have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, done. Thank you.